I was standing in my small studio apartment, surrounded by a chaotic mess of canvases, brushes, and forgotten palettes. The late afternoon sun streamed through the window, illuminating the dust motes dancing in the air. My latest painting, a swirling mix of blues and oranges, sat in the corner, half finished and neglected. I stepped back, my heart heavy with emotions I struggled to express. Art had always been my refuge, a way to pour out my feelings when words failed me. But today, it felt inadequate. Just then, my phone buzzed on the cluttered table. I picked it up, my heart racing as I saw Jake's name flash on the screen. He was my older brother, the charming one, the musician with a troubled soul. We hadn't spoken much since our mom's engagement announcement, our relationship strained by the fallout of our parents' divorce. I hesitated before reading the message. "Hey, can we talk? I need to see you." A mix of anxiety and curiosity coursed through me. I knew this conversation wouldn't be easy, but something in his tone compelled me to respond. I replied quickly, my fingers trembling slightly as I typed, "Sure. The coffee shop around the corner? 5 p.m. As the clock ticked closer to 5, I felt knots forming in my stomach. The memories of our childhood, once filled with laughter and shared secrets, were now overshadowed by resentment and unspoken grievances. I glanced around my apartment, trying to gather my thoughts. What could Jake possibly want to discuss? I could already sense the emotional weight hanging in the air, thick and suffocating. Arriving at the coffee shop, I took a deep breath before stepping inside. The familiar aroma of roasted coffee beans hit me, but it did little to calm my nerves. I spotted Jake sitting at a corner table, looking out the window, lost in thought. His guitar case rested against the wall, a silent testament to his passion and struggles. "Hey," I said softly as I approached, trying to keep my voice steady. "Emma," he replied, offering a small smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. "Thanks for coming." We exchanged pleasantries, but the air between us was charged with unspoken tension. I could see it in the way he fidgeted with the sleeve of his hoodie, the way his eyes darted around the room as if searching for the right words. "Do you want anything?" I asked, hoping to break the ice. "A coffee black," he replied, his voice low. I nodded and motioned to the barista, ordering our drinks before returning to the table. Silence enveloped us, heavy and uncomfortable. I could feel the weight of our history pressing down on us, the unresolved feelings swirling beneath the surface. "So what's up?" I finally asked, my curiosity mingled with apprehension. Jake took a deep breath, his gaze finally meeting mine. I wanted to talk about Mom and her engagement. At the mention of our mother, a wave of irritation washed over me. She moved on so quickly, Jake. It's like our whole family fell apart, and she just forgot about us. My voice trembled slightly, betraying the anger I felt inside. "I know," he said, his expression serious. "But it's not just about her. It's about us too, how we're dealing with all of this." I felt a lump form in my throat, the familiar ache of resentment rising. "What do you mean? Are you blaming me for how I feel?" "No, Emma, that's not what I meant," he replied, running a hand through his tousled hair. "I just think we need to be honest with each other about everything. The divorce, Mom's engagement, it's all affected us." I looked away, my heart racing. The coffee shop buzzed around us, but I felt utterly isolated in that moment. "It's just hard," I admitted, my voice barely a whisper. "I thought family was supposed to stick together, but now it feels broken." Yeah, it does feel broken. Jake finished for me, his tone softening. But I get it. I really do. We sat in silence again, the words hanging between us like a fragile thread threatening to snap at any moment. I felt a surge of emotions. Anger, sadness, longing, but beneath it all, something deeper flickered in the air. The connection between us was undeniable, complicated by the tangled web of our shared past. Just then, our coffees arrived, breaking the tension momentarily. I took a sip, trying to ground myself, but my thoughts were racing. What was happening to us? Would we ever find a way to navigate through this chaos without losing each other completely? The moment I stormed out of the coffee shop, the rush of the Chicago wind hit my face, a stark contrast to the suffocating tension that had filled the space just moments before. My heart raced with a mix of anger and confusion. How could Jake not see my point of view? I shoved my hands into the pockets of my jacket, feeling the familiar weight of unresolved feelings pressing down on me. The streets were buzzing with life, but I felt utterly isolated, a solitary figure, lost in a sea of people. Emma, wait. I heard him call after me, but I didn't turn around. I couldn't. I was afraid if I looked back, I'd see the hurt in his eyes and crumble. Instead, I picked up my pace, the rhythm of my footsteps echoing the turmoil within me. I felt the sting of tears threatening to escape, but I refused to let them fall. Why was it so hard to talk to him? Why did every conversation seem to spiral into chaos? As I walked aimlessly, my mind flashed back to our childhood. I remembered how he would make me laugh with his silly impressions, how we would build forts out of blankets, pretending they were castles. Those memories felt like a lifetime ago, overshadowed by the complications of our adult lives. I could still hear his voice, laced with frustration. You don't understand, Emma. Mom is trying to find happiness again. I stopped at the edge of a park, staring at the vibrant colors of the sunset painting the sky. I took a deep breath, trying to calm the storm inside me. But just as the beauty of the moment started to seep in, the familiar weight of longing crept back. I hated that I felt this way about him, my brother, but the truth was undeniable. There was something deeper between us, something that scared me to my core. Later that evening, I found myself standing in front of the gallery where my art was being exhibited. The walls were adorned with my paintings, each piece a reflection of my soul. I should have been excited, but the earlier confrontation with Jake lingered in my mind. I needed to see him, to understand where we stood. As I entered the gallery, the crowd buzzed with excitement, but my eyes instinctively searched for him. And then I saw him. He stood across the room, his dark hair tousled, looking out of place, yet undeniably captivating. Our eyes locked, and an electric current surged between us, igniting a mix of anger and longing. I made my way through the crowd, my heart pounding with each step. When I reached him, he offered a weak smile, but I could see the tension in his posture. "Hey," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "Hey," I replied, my voice trembling. "I didn't expect to see you here." "I didn't want to miss it," he said, glancing around as if seeking an escape. "Your work is incredible." "Thanks," I mumbled, unsure of how to continue. The air was thick with unspoken words, and I could feel the weight of our earlier argument pressing down on us. The night wore on, filled with awkward glances and tense silences. We stood together in the corner, surrounded by the chatter of other guests, yet feeling completely isolated in our own world. The art around us seemed to pale in comparison to the turmoil brewing beneath the surface. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, we found ourselves in a quiet corner away from prying eyes. "I'm sorry about earlier," Jake said, his voice low and sincere. "I didn't mean to push you away." I could see the vulnerability in his eyes, and it made my heart ache. "It's just, I feel like we're both lost in this mess," I admitted, my voice shaking. "I don't know how to be okay with Mom moving on, or how to be okay with us." He nodded, his gaze intense. "I get that, but I think we need to talk about it, about everything. The past, the present, us." I swallowed hard, the weight of his words settling heavily between us. Memories of our childhood flooded back, moments that defined our bond, but also blurred the lines of what was appropriate. "What do you mean by use?" I asked, my heart racing. "I don't know," he confessed, running a hand through his hair. "But I can't ignore how I feel about you, Emma. Not anymore." The admission hung in the air, thick and heavy. My heart raced, caught between fear and a flicker of hope. "Jake," I started, but the words caught in my throat as I struggled to process the magnitude of what he was saying. In that moment, I realized we were standing on the precipice of something profound, something that could either tear us apart or bind us together in a way we had never imagined. As we looked at each other, the past seemed to fade away, replaced by a future full of uncertainty and possibility. As I sat in the dimly lit corner of the gallery, the vibrant colors of my paintings swirling around me, my heart felt heavy. The emotions of the night before still hung in the air, thick and unyielding. I could see Jake across the room, his hands stuffed into the pockets of his worn jeans, uncertainty etched on his face as he glanced at me. It was maddening, this tension that lay between us, a fragile thread that seemed to pull tighter with every stolen glance. "Hey," he said softly as he approached, his voice barely breaking the silence. "Can we talk?" "About what?" I replied, trying to keep my tone light, but the weight of our previous conversation loomed large. "About everything," he replied, a hint of vulnerability in his eyes that made my stomach flutter. "What happened yesterday? I didn't mean to push you away. I just wanted you to understand." I felt abandoned, Jake. Ever since Mom and Dad split, I felt like I was losing you too. I don't even know what I'm supposed to feel anymore. My voice cracked slightly as I spoke, the words tumbling out before I could stop them. Jake sighed, running a hand through his tousled hair. "I get it. I felt the same way. It's like everything we knew just fell apart. I thought I was alone in this, but maybe I wasn't." For a moment, we stood in silence, the noise of the exhibit around us fading into a distant hum. I felt the familiar pang of longing, the unspoken connection between us sparking to life once more. "You don't know how much I missed you, Jake," I confessed, my voice barely above a whisper. "It's been so hard." His gaze locked onto mine, and I could feel the tension thickening in the air. "I missed you too, Emma, but it's complicated. You're my sister." "Are we really going to keep pretending that it's just that?" I challenged, my heart racing. "What we have, it feels different. I can't just ignore it." Jake stepped closer, the heat radiating off him, making it hard to breathe. "I don't know if we should dive into that, Em. It scares me." "Why?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. "What's so scary about wanting to be close to each other?" "Because I care about you more than I should," he admitted, his eyes darkening with emotion. "And I don't want to ruin what we have or risk losing you entirely." The space between us felt electric, and without thinking, I took a step closer, our breaths mingling in the intimate silence. What if we don't have to lose each other? I murmured, my heart pounding against my ribcage. What if we could find a way to navigate this? In that moment, it felt like we were on the brink of something monumental. I could see the conflict in Jake's eyes, and it mirrored my own. Just as I leaned in, yearning to close the distance, reality crashed into us like a cold wave. We both pulled away, panting slightly, our cheeks flushed. Maybe we need to take a step back, Jake suggested, his voice shaky. Focus on our own lives and passions for a while. I don't want to mess this up, Emma. Yeah, I replied, my voice barely audible, disappointment washing over me. Maybe you're right. We stood there, the moment slipping away like grains of sand through our fingers. I felt a mix of anger and sadness, but also an undeniable connection that we couldn't shake off. As the weeks rolled by, I threw myself into my art, pouring every emotion into each brush stroke, trying to drown out thoughts of Jake and the tension that lingered between us. But no matter how hard I tried to keep my distance, I found myself haunted by our conversation. Jake's music echoed in my mind, each note a reminder of the bond we shared, now thick with unspoken words. On the nights I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, I couldn't shake the feeling that we were meant to confront our feelings, no matter how complicated it became. As I immersed myself in my art, I knew that somewhere in the back of my mind, Jake would always be there, a constant reminder of what we could have, if only we dared to embrace it. The night air was thick with anticipation as I approached the small venue where Jake would be performing. The neon lights flickered above, casting a warm glow over the crowd that had gathered outside. My heart raced, not just from the excitement of seeing him on stage, but from the weight of everything that had transpired between us in recent weeks. The unresolved tension hung like a fog, and I couldn't shake the feeling that tonight would be a turning point. As I entered, the buzz of conversation filled my ears, but all I could focus on was Jake. He was setting up his guitar, a casual confidence radiating from him. His eyes scanned the room, and when they landed on me, a spark ignited. I waved, feeling a rush of warmth as he smiled, a mix of nervousness and joy. The moment felt electric, as if the universe had conspired to bring us here together. The crowd cheered as he took the stage, and I found a spot near the front, my heart pounding in sync with the rhythm of the music. He began to play, and I was immediately captivated by the raw emotion in his voice. Each lyric seemed to speak directly to my soul, words of longing, heartache, and uncertainty. I closed my eyes, letting the music envelop me, and suddenly it was as if he was singing only for me. "Can you hear me?" he sang, his gaze piercing through the crowd, locking onto mine. I'm trying to find the words, but they slip away like whispers in the wind. My breath caught in my throat. Did he know? Did he feel the same way I did? My heart raced as I swayed to the music, caught in a whirlwind of emotions. After the last song, the applause erupted, and I could see him beaming with pride. He stepped off the stage, making his way through the throng of people until he reached me. "You made it," he exclaimed, wrapping me in a warm embrace that felt both comforting and electrifying. "I wouldn't miss it for the world," I replied, my voice barely above a whisper. "You were incredible out there." He smiled, his eyes shining with a mix of gratitude and something deeper. Thanks, Em. It means a lot to have you here. He paused, the atmosphere thickening around us. I have been thinking about us. Me too, I admitted, my heart racing as I took a step back, searching his eyes for answers. I can't ignore the way things have changed between us. Jake looked away for a moment, his expression shifting from elation to something more serious. It's complicated, isn't it? What we feel, it's not just sibling love. I can't help but see you as more than that. His confession sent a thrill through me, but the weight of our reality crashed down. What does that mean for us, Jake? Are we really willing to cross that line? I don't know, he said, running a hand through his hair, a gesture that always made my heart flutter. But I can't pretend anymore. I want to explore this, whatever this is. Just then, the moment felt ripe for a kiss, the air around us crackling with unspoken words and desires. I leaned in, my heart racing, when suddenly he pulled back, his expression shifting from longing to concern. Wait, he said, his voice laced with urgency. There's something I need to tell you. What is it? I asked, feeling the tension snap like a tight string. I've been offered a music opportunity. It's in another state. His words hit me like a cold wave, washing away the warmth of the moment. I'm thinking of taking it. My stomach dropped. You're leaving, just like that. The thought of him moving away felt like a punch to the gut. What about us? What about this? Whatever we're on the brink of? I know, he replied, his voice heavy with regret. But this is a big chance for me, Emma. I need to do this. I could feel tears prickling at the corners of my eyes, a whirlwind of emotion swirling inside me. So what do? Just pretend this moment never happened? Of course not, he said, his voice softening. But I need to figure things out. I can't drag you into this chaos if I'm not sure where I'm going. I took a step back, the distance between us suddenly feeling like a chasm. I want to support you, Jake, but this is hard. I don't know how to let go of what we could have had. Before he could respond, my phone buzzed in my pocket, breaking the tension. I glanced at the screen, my heart sinking as I saw the name of our mother. I need to take this, I said, my voice shaking. I stepped away, feeling the weight of our conversation pressing down on me. When I returned, I found Jake looking pensive, his brow furrowed. What was that about? He asked, his tone laced with concern. It was just Mom, I said, trying to sound nonchalant, but dread was pooling in my stomach. She just wanted to check in. Emma, he began, but I could see it in his eyes, a flicker of worry. Is everything okay? Before I could answer, the atmosphere shifted. A nurse approached us, her expression serious. Excuse me, are you both aware of the paternity test results? The question hung in the air like a thunderclap, and my breath caught in my throat. I turned to Jake, who looked just as stunned as I felt, and in that moment, everything we thought we knew about ourselves and our relationship felt like it was unraveling. The days leading up to Jake's departure felt like an unending fog, each moment weighed down by the unsaid. As I sat in my studio, paintbrush in hand, the vibrant colors around me felt dull and lifeless. I was trying to immerse myself in my art, but my thoughts kept drifting back to Jake and the impending separation. The thought of him leaving was like a knot in my stomach that wouldn't loosen. Every time I heard the faint strum of a guitar from outside, I felt a pang of longing. a reminder of the bond we shared, now thick with unspoken words. Emma, are you even listening? My best friend Lily snapped me out of my reverie. She was sitting across the table, her brows knitted together in concern. You've been zoning out for the past hour. I sighed, putting my brush down. I'm sorry, Lily. It's just, Jake leaves tomorrow. I can't stop thinking about it. Lily leaned in closer, her voice dropping to a whisper. Have you told him how you feel? I shook my head, the weight of my hesitation crashing down on me. No, I want to. But what if it ruins everything? What if he doesn't feel the same? My heart raced at the thought. Or what if he does? You'll never know unless you say something, she urged, her eyes bright with encouragement. You can't let him go without at least trying. That night, I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, the darkness wrapping around me like a heavy blanket. Memories of our childhood flooded my mind, running through the park, climbing trees, sharing secrets under the stars. I felt a surge of courage. I couldn't let fear dictate my feelings anymore. Tomorrow, at the park, I would tell him. As the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of orange and purple, I found myself at our childhood park. The swings creaked softly in the wind, and the familiar scent of grass filled the air. Jake was already there, sitting on a bench, his guitar resting beside him. He looked up as I approached, a smile breaking through the tension that hung between us. Hey, he said, his voice warm, yet laced with an underlying sadness. Hey, I replied, taking a seat beside him. I thought we could hang out one last time before you leave. He nodded, his gaze drifting to the ground. Yeah, I've been thinking about our childhood a lot lately. It's hard to believe how much has changed. Yeah, I agreed, my heart racing as I searched for the right words. You remember the time we built that treehouse? We thought we could conquer the world from up there. Jake chuckled softly, the sound a balm to my nerves. And we almost fell out of it when Dad tried to climb up. We shared a laugh. But as the silence stretched between us, I felt the weight of my unconfessed feelings hanging in the air. Jake, there's something I need to tell you, I began, my voice trembling slightly. He turned to face me, his expression serious. What is it, Emma? I took a deep breath, summoning every ounce of courage. I've been feeling things that go beyond just being siblings. I care about you, Jake, more than I probably should. His eyes widened, and for a moment, the world around us faded away. He started, but before he could finish, he looked down, almost as if the ground could offer him an escape. I've felt the same way for a long time, Emma, more than a brother should. The confession hung between us, electric and charged. The air pulsed with something undeniable, and I leaned in, heart racing, ready to close the distance. Just as our lips were about to meet, my phone buzzed in my pocket, shattering the moment. Sorry, I have to check this, I mumbled, fumbling for my phone. I glanced at the screen and felt my heart drop. It was a text from Lily, asking if I'd heard from Mom. My pulse quickened. Something felt off. Emma? Jake's voice cut through my thoughts, laced with concern. What is it? What? I looked up, trying to mask my fear. It's nothing, just... Before I could finish, Jake's phone rang, and he answered it almost instinctively. Hello? His face paled as he listened intently, his eyes searching mine for answers I didn't have. What? Where? The color drained from his face, and I felt a chill run down my spine. Whatever news he was receiving was terrible, and I could see the panic in his eyes. "Okay, I'll be right there," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. He hung up and turned to me, his expression a mixture of fear and urgency. "Emma, it's Mom. Something's happened." In that moment, the world shifted beneath us, and the weight of our unspoken words faded into the background. All that mattered now was the uncertainty looming ahead, pulling us back into the chaotic realm of family dynamics and the fragility of our bond. My heart raced as Jake's phone rang, the sound slicing through the heavy silence that had enveloped us after that unexpected kiss. He answered, his brow furrowing deeply with each word he heard. "What, Mom?" His voice was strained, and I could see the color drain from his face, the way it did when he was about to confront something big, something that could shatter everything we thought we knew. "What happened?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper, but he held up a hand, signaling for me to wait. I watched him pace, his fingers running through his hair in frustration, his usual charm replaced by a palpable tension. The world around us faded as I focused solely on him, wishing I could ease whatever burden he was carrying. After a few agonizing moments, he hung up the phone, his hands shaking slightly. "Emma," he began, his voice thick with emotion. "It's Mom. She was in a car accident. It's serious." The words struck me like a punch to the gut. My breath hitched, and a whirlwind of emotions flooded my mind. Is she going to be okay?" I asked, desperation creeping into my tone. "I don't know," he said, his eyes glistening with unshed tears. "They're taking her to the hospital now. We need to go." We rushed to the car, the weight of the world pressing down on us. The drive to the hospital felt surreal, each passing streetlight blurring into a haze. I couldn't shake the feeling that everything was spiraling out of control, and the tension between us, once charged with unspoken feelings, now felt overshadowed by fear. Once inside the hospital, we navigated through sterile corridors, the scent of antiseptic heavy in the air. We reached the waiting room, where a handful of anxious faces mirrored our own. I could see Jake's jaw clenched tight as he paced back and forth, his usual easygoing demeanor replaced by a sense of urgency. "Jake, let's sit down for a minute," I suggested, my voice shaky. I needed to be strong for both of us, but the reality of what was happening was overwhelming. He nodded and sank into a chair, burying his face in his hands. For a moment, I sat next to him, placing a comforting hand on his back. "We'll get through this," I said softly, though I wasn't sure if I believed it. The silence that followed was deafening, filled only with the distant beeping of machines and hushed voices of other families waiting for news. After what felt like an eternity, a nurse approached us, her expression serious, yet compassionate. "Are you both aware of the paternity test results?" she asked, and I felt the air leave my lungs. "What?" I gasped, my mind racing. I glanced at Jake, whose eyes widened in confusion. "What are you talking about?" The nurse looked between us, her gaze lingering. "I can't discuss anything without your consent, but it's important you know. There were some discrepancies." "Discrepancies?" Jake echoed, his voice rising. "What does that mean?" Is Mom okay? The nurse hesitated, clearly caught off guard by the sudden emotional outburst. I'm sorry, but I can't provide information about your mother's condition until we have more details. However, it's crucial to understand the context of the results. What results? I demanded, my heart racing. The tension that had built between us, the intensity of our feelings, suddenly felt trivial against this new reality. Jake stood up, frustration boiling over. Just tell us what you mean. We're family. We deserve to know. The nurse took a deep breath, her composure faltering slightly. The paternity test results indicate that there may be more to your family dynamic than you previously understood. I felt the ground shift beneath me, the world around me spinning. The words echoed in my mind, each one a shard of ice driving deeper into my chest. I looked at Jake, whose expression mirrored my own, shock and confusion. Our bond, our feelings, everything we had just begun to explore. It all felt like it was hanging by a thread. Are you saying? I stammered, unable to finish the thought. The nurse didn't respond, and in that moment, the weight of the revelation settled heavily between us. The future of our relationship felt impossibly uncertain, each possibility more daunting than the last. I could see the fear in Jake's eyes, and for the first time, I felt the devastating reality of what we might have lost, not just our mother, but the very foundation of what we believed to be true about ourselves. As the nurse walked away, I turned to Jake, our eyes locking in a moment that felt charged with everything unspoken between us. The chaos of the hospital faded, and all that remained was the weight of a truth we were not prepared to face.